This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. As we continue to look at the crackdown on student-led Gaza solidarity encampments across U.S. campuses, we look now at how the Biden administration and several members of Congress have echoed intensifying accusations that the peaceful student-led pro-Palestinian protests are anti-Semitic. We're joined now by Omer Bartov. He's professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Brown University. His recent piece is headlined Weaponizing Language, Misuses of Holocaust Memory and the Never Again Syndrome. The professor recently visited the student Gaza Solidarity encampment at the University of Pennsylvania, sharing on social media a photograph with the Israeli historian Raz Segal and a message that said, quote, with Raz Segal at the UPenn encampment on April 26th, warm and open conversation about the perils of anti-Semitism and its current weaponization, unquote. Omer Bartov is also author of numerous books, including Genocide, the Holocaust, and Israel-Palestine, First-Person History in Times of Crisis. He's an Israeli-American scholar who's been described by the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum as one of the world's leading specialists on the subject of genocide. He's joining us now from his home in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Professor Bartov, welcome back to Democracy Now! If you can talk about what's happening on these college campuses, what your visit to the UPenn encampment was like, as your own university, Brown University, students have set up an encampment, and their chant is from Columbia to Brown, we will not let Gaza down. And talk about what authorities are charging are the charges of anti-Semitism, although so many of those involved in these encampments are Jewish, with groups like Jewish Voice for Peace.
Good morning, Amy. Thank you for having me again. Well, look, I mean, my visit to UPenn, I was there with Raz Segal. We first actually gave a talk, both of us, about anti-Semitism and its current weaponization. And then we visited the encampment. It was a beautiful afternoon. There were very nice, good students there. We sat and chatted with them. We talked about anti-Semitism and about its current use. There was absolutely no sign of any violence, of any anti-Semitism at all. There were Jewish students there. There were Arab students there. There were all kinds of young people there, and the atmosphere was very good. The next day, I heard that the authorities of UPenn had decided to shut down the encampment. A couple of days earlier, I was passing by the green at Brown University, and again, there was an encampment there. Students were sitting there quietly, singing, playing the guitar. It was all very peaceful. And that same day, I heard from a faculty member who had visited that encampment that he had received an email from the dean of the faculty warning him that if he were to show up there again, measures would be taken. And now this issue is being debated at Brown. I believe this afternoon, there would be a meeting with the faculty, many of whom are, of course, like me, very upset by this kind of arbitrary action, which was taken without any consultation with faculty. So that's the kind of context. Look, I mean, obviously, anti-Semitism, as myself and many others have said, is a vile sentiment. It's an old sentiment. It has been used for bloodshed, for violence, and for genocide. And no one should condone it. And obviously, none of us would ever condone it. But it has also become a tool to silence speech about Israel. And that, too, has quite a history. And the current Israeli government, or rather the numerous governments under Benjamin Netanyahu, have been pushing this agenda of arguing that any criticism of Israeli policies, not least of Israeli occupation policies, this precedes, of course, events in Gaza, is anti-Semitic. And I've been listening to some of the interviews with Jewish students who feel threatened, and often it appears to me And of course, we don't have, good research on that at the moment, but it appears to me that many of them feel threatened because they see a Palestinian flag, because they hear people calling for intifada. Intifada means shaking off. There's a very similar word in Hebrew for it, leitnael. It's what a dog does when it shakes off water. It's to shake off the occupation. And there are Jewish students, often who are influenced by the Israeli friends, who feel that that is threatening. But there's nothing threatening about opposing occupation and oppression. That is not anti-Semitism. You can agree with it or not. Even being anti-Zionist is not anti-Semitic. There are hundreds of thousands, if not more, of ultra-Orthodox Jews, including some who are in the Israeli government, who are anti-Zionist. But they're not anti-Semitic. They see themselves as the epitome of Jewishness and Jewish tradition. So there's politics and there's prejudice. And if we don't make a distinction between the two, then what we are actually doing is enforcing a kind of silence over the policies that have been conducted by the Israeli government for a long time and that ultimately culminated now in the utter destruction of Gaza.
We were showing images of the Brown protest where you're a professor. And some of the signs read, "Brown divest now." Another said, "No others like Hishem." Of course, referring to the Brown University student Hishem Ortani, the Palestinian-American student who was visiting his grandmother in Burlington, Vermont with his two best friends, also Palestinian-American, and they were shot by a white man from his porch. Hishem was the most wounded. He is paralyzed. And then you have at Columbia the students who were skunked, that kind of chemical that is used where I think it sent 8 Columbia students. They were pro-Palestinian activists protesting to the hospital. And it turned out that at least one of the people who skunked them was a former IDF Israeli military soldier who was studying at Columbia University.
Look, first of all, about Hisham, I mean, this is just a terrible tragedy. He and his two friends. This sort of combines both the politics and the rhetoric of hate that you find these days in Israel, and of course American discourse, which have unfortunately converged, and that's just horribly tragic. This case of skunking, over the last few months, there have been many demonstrations in Israel against this government's policy. And the government has taken to using water cannon, often in a really brutal manner, that is firing it directly at people's faces, which is legally not allowed, and using this kind of stinking water, skunk, in central streets in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem, again, to shut down any debate in Israel. And it's very sad to see that being also imported to American streets. Let me say there's an interesting difference between what is happening in Israel regarding Gaza, what is happening in the United States. In Israel, heads of universities have come out just recently with a statement, a warning about anti-Semitism on American campuses, which to my knowledge does not exist in any significant form. That is, as I said before, not anti-Semitism, but protests against Israeli policies. These same heads of universities in Israel have been collaborating in shutting down criticism in Israel itself. And there was a very tragic case with a Palestinian professor at the Hebrew University, Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian, who was first sort of attacked by the university and later was arrested by the police and mistreated really badly, kept overnight in a jail, stripped, humiliated. This is a full professor in her 60s and a well-known scholar, because she had expressed empathy with what was happening in Gaza. And the main difference is that not only did university leaders not come out in support of their own faculty member, but there are many students at the universities that are actually supporting these kinds of policies. And I think we should be proud that in American universities, students actually are demonstrating in favor of those who are being oppressed and now who are being killed. And they're doing it, first of all, because it's the right thing to do. They're doing it also because they are American citizens. It is American taxpayers' money that is paying for the arms that the United States is shipping in vast amounts to Israel so as to destroy Gaza. And they have every right, and in fact, they have a duty to protest against these kinds of policies.
Omer Bartov, I want to thank you so much for being with us, professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Brown University. He's an Israeli-American scholar described by the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum as one of the world's leading specialists on the subject of genocide.